Hello and welcome back to another edition of Windows on Current Affairs. And today, 120 years ever since the Egyptian Museum was established in Tahrir Square here in the central Midtown Cairo. And of course, this is an overwhelming event. Of course, this particular museum is a foundation for all the artifacts, for all the history of Egypt. It gathers almost 1/3 of the world's history, of Egypt's history, which is 1/3 of the world monuments on a scale to be measured. And of course, Egypt, when it established that particular museum, exhibited in it its most important artifacts and of course its mummies and a lot of historical pieces and many things that we are going to talk about, to talk in detail and talk about how important is that particular museum to tourism, to history, to the world, and to the history of Egypt in particular. And when it comes to talking about museums worldwide, the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir Square or in Midtown Cairo is on top of them all, and it is on top it is the most popular worldwide, though that it's a very old one, and ever since Egypt have established many other museums, including other museums in other governorates in Egypt, but still the Egyptian Museum remains the oldest and the most important of all. We're very delighted to be having with us our dear guest, Rana Ehab. She is a heritage researcher and also an Egyptologist. Good evening, Rana.
Good evening. Always appreciated to be here. I'm so happy to be with you every episode.
My real pleasure, and the same thing here. Of course, today we celebrate 120 years of the Egyptian Museum, with all its stories, with all its history, with all the additions that were included to it all over the years. Let's start with the foundation of this museum. How do you think it was founded?
Actually, we have a history for the building itself. We're not talking about the objects inside, but I want to talk about the story of building itself. The story started when they start to collect many different pieces from many different places here in Egypt. They bought it in Giza, then it moved to Bulaq. Then they decided to create a place to collect all of the treasure of ancient Egyptian time in one place. So actually there is international competition between all the designers around the world, and the one who was succeeded, one called the architect Marcel. Then the museum start the building itself under the supervision of Auguste Mariette, the archaeologist, the famous archaeologist Auguste Mariette. And that time the one who ordered to make the Egyptian Museum building is actually Khedive Abbas Helmi II. And we start a new time and a new kind of generation in all the history, not in just in the Middle East or in the North Africa, but for my opinion in all the world. When we talk about the Egyptian Museum, we talk about the Egyptian Museum as the first building to be an actual museum. If we said the oldest museum in all the world, located in any different other country, but in the Egyptian Museum, it's completely different. All the museums around the world, the oldest one is built actually, it's a palace and it's converted to be a museum. The Egyptian Museum building in Tahrir built to be a museum. So we can see the nice mix between the old architecture and the old history that passed in Egypt. We can find the great and the large windows and the large doors, and inside that we can see the windows which is look like the windows in the church and in the monasteries. If we look in the details, we will find the Greek and Roman columns. When we enter from the door of the museum, we feel like we are in the temple, arriving to the Holy of Holies. So the building itself is amazing. And the objects inside the building itself, each one just talk about the history of Egypt by a different way. So this is the highlight of the story of the Egyptian, how the Egyptian museum actually started to be.
This particular museum was recently added to the UNESCO's World Heritage Site tentative list as on top of this list. If you like to elaborate, because it deserves and more when it comes to a World Heritage.
Yes,
tentative
exactly.
list.
A lot of people, when they are talking about the archaeological or sites place in Egypt or any other world, they talk about the object itself, but we are talking about the building, and we are talking about the objects inside the building, and this is rare to happen around the world. If we said it's not happened actually. So if we're talking about the list, it was recorded also in the SSCO, and it was recorded in the UNESCO as a historical building. And Tahrir Square in general, we have it's related to the heart of Egyptian people. So we have one of the oldest elements in the in Tahrir Square actually is the Egyptian museum. It's by its different design, but its unique design, by the location of it. So all of that make the place both on the heritage list in the UNESCO and the SSCO and many other places. We only talking about the building. So if we're talking about the building and what is serves the building itself. So we have inside the museum, we have a garden, we have a great library, we have children museum, we have a theater, we have a lot of things actually make this place is unique to be added as a place, as only. It's not a place, I mean, it's a building itself only. It's added to UNESCO because it have a lot of valuable things talking about in the building. Building tell us about these valuable things.
Of course, the Ministry of Antiquities and Tourism asserted after transforming the mummies to the National Museum of the Civilization that the old Egyptian museum won't die and will never die, because there was some concerns that transferring some of the mummies would really affect the popularity of this authentic museum, and popularity especially in outside Egypt, because there was a huge turnout for this particular museum. On the contrary, this museum became even more popular as, like you said, it's not only an idea for displaying mummies, for displaying artifacts, for displaying pieces of history, but also for the building itself, for the authenticity of and its importance, and even the way it was built and the history of building it. All those elements and reasons made it a special case in its own right. If you like to elaborate.
Yes, some people, when they are said we visit the Egyptian museum for the mummy or for the objects of King Tutankhamun, they will never know about the most important and the unique objects inside. So if we are just visiting the Egyptian museum in Tahrir for mummies or for Tutankhamun collection, this is not true. We visit the Egyptian museum to see the building, to see another unique objects. For example, we have the builders, the statues of the builders, great pyramid in all the world, in the Egyptian museum in Tahrir, Khufu, Khafra, Menkaura. All of the statues of those kings actually located in the Egyptian museum in Tahrir. If we are talking about all the mummies was moved to another museum, National Museum, we have another mummies in the Egyptian museum that related to the animals. So this is also something unique. We cannot find in any other museums, and even in Cairo. And if we are talking about what it replaced by when we moved the treasure of King Tutankhamun, we have a lot and many thousands of objects we can display. We can know more about the history of Egypt, why the people bought themselves or bought Egypt or bought the Egyptian museum in Tahrir in just a zone of mummy or a zone of King Tutankhamun. We have a lot of other stories about ancient Egypt. We have a lot of stories about other kings, and when we see now the new style of the Egyptian museum, the new display objects and all of those things, we will recognize how the importance of those objects to talk about the history of Egypt, like Atanis, for example, which is displayed in the rooms of King Tutankhamun. All of them also was made from gold. We have different jewelries that it's a one in the world. We have not. It's not copied. It's the same idea of the uniqueness of the tomb of Tutankhamun. We have a lot of things that also talking about the mummies, the funerary life in ancient Egypt, the afterlife, how they are thinking about their death. All of those also displayed. So the zone of the museum will be die. Actually, this is completely not true. So the activities actually here in the Egyptian museum, the children museum, which has played a very important role to increase the awareness of the students, increase the awareness of the people themselves by the workshop there, by the activities they are doing. We have a children museum inside the Egyptian museum. The people, even they are in the teenagers themselves want to play in the children museum. The activities, the workshop, all of that make the museum in a live place. Tahrir, Egyptian museum in Tahrir in downtown, and all the people, when they walk around the place, they want to enter this place because its shape, it's a space. A lot of things make this place is actually
because
important.
of its character and its essence.
Exactly.
But like you said, mentioning Tutankhamun's pieces and jewelry and all the treasures that accompanied that particular saga of Tutankhamun that were transferred to the other museum. Talking about the replacements of that were taken instead of Tutankhamun's treasures, and if it's equally important as Tutankhamun, we need an elaboration. I mean, what type of things that replaced the treasures of Tutankhamun, and where it was able to attract the attention of the world as Tutankhamun did?
Actually, this is playing in the marketing plan, how we can do the marketing plan for that, and actually the display itself. So the display for the Egyptian museum with cooperate with other international museum in Europe in general. We did the same things to make a tourist attack to this place. So, for example, if we are talking about the golden mask of King Tutankhamun, which is displayed in the Egyptian museum, actually we have also a golden mask for other kings, and it's also displayed.
Why do you think this particular one was very popular and gained popularity over all the other golden masks and treasures of other great kings?
Because it's just
because it's the boy king.
It's a boy king. It's unique, and even and the finish of the golden mask is completely different from other masks. The jewelry itself, the precious materials was bought, and the golden mask of King Tutankhamun is not like in other. If we have a precious material and the golden mask of King Tutankhamun, other masks is completely made from only gold. So this is the point, because maybe the other masks was made in different ages, so no one can do or copy himself from other king. You want to do something different from the other king, so it's different in the way itself. For that reason, each statue or each mask or each object actually tell us a different story about its owner. So we have a lot of the material, gold materials, and we have gold jewelries. Different things actually was displayed in Tunis, and it was opened recently. The labeling itself in the Egyptian museum, it's different, because if we talking about caring about the disability around the world, so we can found a label in a pride way actually in the Egyptian museum for the most important objects in the Egyptian museum. like the objects for the important kings, important also panels, all of those things.
Right. Of course. What do you think is the museum's plan in the sense of displaying the treasures and objects and artifacts instead of other things that were transferred to the other museum? How did it went? I mean, how did it work?
Actually, I want to say the Egyptian Museum, it's talk about the history of Egypt from the pre-dynastic period till the Greek, Roman, Islamic, and Coptic also. So they cooperate with the other European museum to make a kind of different display for each period. So when we went to the ancient Egyptian time, it's different kind. When we go to the Greek or Roman, we feel it's the same style, but by the different way of the labeling, of the lighting, display, you feel like you are in the same museum, but you enter different periods. It's not all of them in the same way and the same levels or the same. The display, it's different how we can show the objects for the people, how we can show the object for the tourist himself. So we can see before the Egyptian Museum before 5 years ago, and now we will find a lot of things actually was changed, and the objects. Sometimes we found an object, and this is important object, but we found it hidden. This important object is now showed off very well. The people can know more about it from the labels itself. Actually, also it's played something going very, very good and well in the Egyptian Museum. The archive of the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir. Now it's we can know more things about more objects, and even in the storage of the Egyptian Museum. So this is also important, and we are not only working on the display of the objects that people see or the tourists see, but also we are working on the archive and the storage and many other things in the museum.
Talks or people said that this particular museum is going to serve differently after GEM is opened. I mean, it's going to be serving as an educational and cultural center and special enrolled place for children's activities and cultural center for children. And I mean, it's going to serve differently, but it's also going to exhibit history and artifacts, but in a different way. How is that?
When we are talking about this point, especially people afraid to hide the rule of the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir. So when we are talking about the cultural rule or the educational rule of the Egyptian Museum, it's going the same of all the other museums doing in Egypt. It will increase, and there was, I think, in our trips and the schools, when we are talking about the trips, the first thing come in our mind, Egyptian Museum. So it's important, and it will be increased. For that reason, we have the Children's Museum. We have a library, which is one of the greatest libraries of museums here in Egypt. The collection inside the library of Egyptian Museum actually considered as antiquities too. So because it holds the mother books and all the science that related to Egyptology and the science of Egyptology in general. So we are working in the workshops. So this going to make us that there is now a related topics between all the Egyptian museum here, and the topics are served in all the museums. It's also to help and to serve the local community, the people who live around the area, not only the tourists. We are working also on the people who lived in Egypt. So for that reason, all of these developments will show well, especially when we are saying about when we have a free of day, free entry of the museum, the most museum, all the people will be visit the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir, because it's take a place in the heart of the Egyptian people. For that reason, maybe we said it will be a cultural place to increase the awareness of the archaeology, to increase the awareness of Egyptology in general. The place or the start will be from here.
Further notable change is that the museum is undergoing a special attention, or is being transferred into exhibiting more the lives of ancient Egypt, people who lived at that era and how they lived, and displaying the many fronts of the lives of ancient Egyptians. How is that happening? If you'd like to elaborate.
As I said, the Egyptian Museum, it's started or it's displayed the period from the prehistory till the Greco-Roman. So it's displayed more than 1,000 hundreds of objects in the Egyptian Museum. So when we enter for the first time the Egyptian Museum, we will see a place, and it's in a special way, a special place, and in the center of the entrance of the Egyptian Museum, and we will see the first historical document in all the world. Which is the palette of Narmer, commemorate his victory when he unified Egypt. And after around us, we will find the objects from the prehistory, how the ancient Egyptian is clever enough to make a pottery like that without a pottery wheel. So and also we can see the other kings, important kings of Egypt, like King Khufu, King Khafra, and especially the King Khafra. When we talk about him, one of the archaeologists said, if the ancient Egyptian didn't discover except this object, it will be also the greatest civilization in all the world. So because of the material of it. And we have rooms that talk about the ancient Egyptian daily life. It's talk about the ancient Egyptian
household
writing.
and the food and
Exactly. So what they are actually using in their normal life, from their foods, their cosmetics, the music, the musician and instruments, and also it's display a kind of the medicine tools. We have the cosmetics tools, for example, for sure, for the boxes and the al-kahl and all of these things that the queens and the princess was used. And we have also the rooms of the writing tools. What is the writing tools? We talking about the writing tools. We have the longest papyri in Egypt, also located in the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir.
Papyrus there?
Yes, exactly. It's the longest one. And what makes this papyrus special, because it's describe the every step for the ancient Egyptian afterlife. How it's doing, how this person was lived, and all of this stuff. And when we are talking about also the colors of the panels, the colors, of the history of the most important kings in Egypt, like for example Queen Hatshepsut. We have many statues for Queen Hatshepsut inside the Egyptian Museum in Al-Tahrir, the famous one, the colored one, and King Thutmose III, the emperor of Egypt in that time. King Akhenaten, also the coffin of King Akhenaten, the sarcophagi of King Akhenaten, the statues, the great statues of King Akhenaten. And we have also a kind of amazing piece that maybe all the people didn't know about it, the bust of Queen Nefertiti. So the Queen Nefertiti, we know the famous bust for her, it's located in the Berlin Museum, but we have another bust, it's unfinished for sure, it's not like in the Berlin one, but it's unfinished, but it's for also Queen Nefertiti. If the artist will complete the post of this post in Egyptian Museum, it will be the same post in the Berlin Museum.
Can you describe it, please?
Yeah, the post, it's made from a kind of stone, and we have the marks of the eyebrows of the bone checks, also of the lips of the Queen Nefertiti, the same way of doing her head. Sorry, so all of that, we have the same post here. So this is also amazing thing. The Egyptian Museum is full of thousands of pieces, of amazing pieces we will talk about. We need thousands of episodes to talk about the objects inside. We have also the canopic jars. The canopic jars,
Jars?
is actually a jars. In the mummification process, when they get all the organs out of the body, they didn't throw it. They bought it in the canopic jars.
And it's still located inside?
We have, yes, we have canopic jars in the Egyptian museums. It's also actually amazing colored one. It's look like the canopic jars of King Tutankhamun, but
it's stones or it's
yes,
true,
actually these jars it was made from different kinds of stones, and they bought the organs inside.
Yes, but it has organs already?
Yes, it's still mummified inside.
Amazing work.
Exactly. So we have a lot of amazing things is still in the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir. So for one of the most things and the most masterpieces too, the smallest and the only statue for King Khafra, for the King Khufu, the great builder of the first pyramid in Giza Plateau, and it's considered as the only statue for the King Khufu, just 7 centimeter, and it's describe the king when he's sitting in his throne holding his royal form and those stuff. It's very small, but it's great. And we have also the funerary room of the mother of Khufu, Hatib Hars, which is considered amazing, because in this time we discovered that the silver is more important than gold in ancient Egypt. It's rare. So we found the bracelets of the queen, which is made from silver. Her room, it's made from wood, and all of that gilded by gold. And also we have a kind of Palermo stone, which is mentioned the king list of ancient Egypt during the Old Kingdom. And we have a lot of things. The servant statues, which show us how the workers and which is kind of work in ancient Egypt they are working. The bakery, the people who holding the fruits and doing the beers, all of this stuff actually located in the Egyptian Museum. The jewelries. When we are talking about the jewelries or treasure, the first thing come in our mind that related to the King Tutankhamun treasure. But we have another treasure, amazing treasure that related even to the high official people.
It totally represents another era?
Yes, yeah, it represents another era, not only for the ancient Egyptian, but the most focusing for sure is about the ancient Egypt, but we have also a great statues about the philosophers that talk about the Greek and the Roman life in Egypt. And actually we have amazing statues that we found, and a Greek king or a Greek prince, but with his curly hair, putting the names, the head cover of the ancient Egypt. So we can see a different mix. This is not located like Egyptian king, it's a Greek king, but he wants to present himself to the people as an Egyptian king. So this also important point, and we cannot see this statues or see this type of art in different place.
Right. Like you said, this museum holds importance until this very moment and will continue to do so because of the way and the story behind its building and the reason and everything. Let's talk about the difference between this authentic museum and the GEM, the Grand Egyptian Museum that is expected to be inaugurated. I mean, the way both museums were built is totally different. In what way? We need to analyze how and why this museum was built, and the other one already we knew already how it was built. There is difference, of course, between of space, which is the major difference. There is difference of technique of displaying those artifacts or displaying history. Difference in time, difference in exhibiting the ideas and everything. So talk to us about this. Of course, we're going to be talking about our Egyptian museum.
Yes, I want to say, if we are talking about the older place and the new one, the world is developed. So in the Grand Egyptian Museum, the difference will be also in the digitalization of this. So we have a lot of things that related to the internet. It's related to the VR. It's related to different type of displaying the object by making it and to go with the development of the world itself. So if we said like when we want to visit our grandmother houses, because it's have different soul inside the place. It's the same in the between the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir and the Grand Egyptian Museum. The Grand Egyptian Museum, for sure, we have a lot of more than one garden, places to do more activities inside. But also the difference between, we will find a complete collection inside the Grand Egyptian Museum. Yes. So, for example, all the collection of King Tutankhamun will be displayed there. And if we are talking about the different things will be found in the Grand Egyptian Museum, the boats that are found in the Giza Plateau that's related to the King Khufu actually was moved also to this place. So we will find a complete collection about a specific thing. In the Egyptian Museum, we have a different mix between everything. That's the major.
So you were talking about the gem in the senses that it's made to cope with the mission of a new museum to display not only history but display also lots of other things besides history in a modern way. Talking about the Egyptian Museum, it was made in a way, the way it was built was only made to display the artifacts and also the Egyptian, the lives of ancient Egyptians, right?
Yes, this is true. And the Egyptian Museum is a start and as idea to collect inside it the treasure we are found in Egypt. But the develop of, we didn't want to make it as only a museum. We want to make it education place. In all the world, some other museums, when they built it in the world, they take the museum as a school for the students. If it's hard to go and to the schools in the time of the wars and those stuff, so the museum play the role of the school. So it's the same for the Egyptian Museum. By the time from the 19th century, it's played the same role. So we want to people to go to this place to learn more about the idea of their heritage, the idea of their the importance of their countries in general. And if we are talking, the one who supervised on the director of the Egyptian Museum for the long time actually is a Frenchman who was Auguste Mariette. So it's moved the European thoughts about this stuff here in Egypt. It's different because they didn't have all of this stuff in Europe and that time. So they found the Egyptian Museum, or they found the antiquities as something very fabulous. Egyptian, because they are living in that and they saw all of that all the time, they didn't know they will learn more about it. Okay, we know it and this is enough. But for the others people, they want to make the people of their countries and Egypt want to learn more, but they are focusing only to learn all of this stuff for their countries, not for the Egyptian people. Because actually the Egyptian people, they have, in that time, they have enough awareness about that, so they didn't want to know more about it. The Egyptology science, when it started for the first time, it's not started by the Egyptian efforts. It started by the other, in the helps of the, with the help of the Egyptian people. So all of that just to make a kind of, if we are actually make the museum to be an educational place or to be a museum. No, we built a museum to be a museum, to see the artifact, because at that time the Egyptian people have the enough awareness about their heritage.
Right. On this note, Rana Ehab, you are a heritage researcher and also an Egyptologist. Would like to thank you so much, as usual, for the valuable information that every time you come with.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Give it to us here in Windows on Current Affairs, and all the best to you, inshallah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So and I guess this would bring us to the end of this edition of Windows on Current Affairs. Many thanks to all of you. Till we see you once again next week. That's a goodbye.